For women entrepreneurs, it's finding other women, find other women. And if you're listening to this and you're a women entrepreneur, you don't know any, please contact me. Because that's such and then just in general, having other founders that you trust, that you could talk to about, your shitty days and who can relate in some way, shape or form. Because what we do is very different from most people. In my life anyway, out of my friends and out of my family, there's not a lot of entrepreneurs. So.
Hey, it's Amy Calandrino. I'm coming back to you with another episode of the Performance Mindset Podcast. For those of you who know me, know I've been doing this for over a decade, helping commercial real estate business owners and investors. And in this podcast, I bring some of the most inspiring and influential leaders I've met along the way. I hope that we can share some valuable insights and help you grow. So if you're looking to grow, you're tuning into the right show. Today, I'm excited to have Marissa Limsiaco on the show today. She's a 4-time founder, combat veteran, graduate of Westpoint. She's also president and co-founder of Otso and has been named one of the most influential women in commercial real estate. She is an accomplished entrepreneur and has the opportunity to lead successful teams all over the world, including when she served in Iraq. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Amy. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's awesome. So we first met at the CREI Summit. For those of you, those not knowing what that is, can you share with us a little bit more about it?
Yeah, CREI Summit was started by Ken Ashley with the intent to bring not only all the influencers in social media, since that became so big during COVID, there was like this community that was built out of it. But also really it's to bring those people together and to help others in the industry grow their own personal brands or even business brands via social media. So it's become this really fun gathering and one of my favorite conferences of the year, frankly.
I dig it. And I can't wait to find out where next year's is going to be. Has that been released publicly?
It hasn't. No.
Okay.
I'm
Do you
eager
know
as well.
what it is and you're keeping it a secret?
I don't know.
Don't?
Yeah.
No.
I'll text Ken after this. I'll have to ask him if they've figured that out. But to my knowledge, I'm not sure.
Wow. Yeah. So anyone in commercial real estate, go to CREISummit.com to learn a bit more about it. And it has 4 different influencer lists, top women in commercial real estate, top Instagram, top Twitter, and top LinkedIn.
Yeah. I know they have influencers for every platform, but it's really more so just like this fun environment where everyone wants to learn, and there's courses, there's workshop, there's influencers like Carrie Bob on stage, talking about Hello Jenny and how to boost, leasing efforts through Instagram. And so there's so much good content and amazing and make some amazing connections, such as we did at the conference this year, is where we met.
Yes. Well, tell us about your entrepreneur journey and like what companies you've been involved with and where you're at now and what do they do?
Yeah, I think if you would have told me 10, 12 years ago when I got out of the military that I'd be an entrepreneur, I would have just kind of given you, I have no idea what we're talking about, because I didn't have any entrepreneurs in my family or anything. But what I did know is I love to solve problems. And I like to create things. And so that really started right out of business school. I went to business school full time for 2 years after the military and kind of incubated this business idea that I brought to life when I graduated. And that first business was a services company. I had a group of developers and we basically built out software applications for folks that wanted to start a business, and this was in Austin, by the way. So there was no shortage of ideas or business there at the time. And so I did that for a few years and was able to exit from that because I realized I wanted to do a product company. And so I jumped into helping one start, but then I realized I needed a reset. So took a couple of years off. And then Josh, my now co-founder, approached me in 2015 when I wasn't sure if I ever wanted to do a startup again at that point, and convinced me to come back in the game. And so the other three was a commercial real estate consultant firm out of New York City. That was pretty brief, but it was a good lessons learned in real estate in New York City, which is different than most places. And then we had a company called Tenavox, and then now we have Otso.
So you've been in Austin, New York, and now you're here again.
I'm in Orlando. Yeah.
And shame on us, we haven't gotten together yet since
I
the
know,
conference.
that's total fail. But I mean, a hurricane came through. There's been some stuff going on. So
Hurricane Ian, my son said to me, he's like, I'm mad at Ian. And I'm like, why? And he's like, he took my power away. So,
did y'all lose power for a bit?
5 days.
Oh, we didn't lose any power. We got really lucky.
Yeah. But we have a bathtub. So some other people's houses, like not even to be like cute about it. I mean, like there was houses that washed out to the ocean. So like
super grateful for that. Yeah.
It's the devastation in Southwest is like, it's going to take a long time to recover from, but yeah, you've been to Orlando and you now have survived your first hurricane, which was still a hurricane when it got to Orlando.
It was, yeah, really, really grateful we turned out okay.
What do you consider to be your greatest accomplishment? Because you've done so many different things.
Yeah, I think if you would have told me like 3 years ago, it would have been, maybe one of the things on my resume. But I think over the years, and I spoke to my grandfather, who was 85 years old at the time. He was on his deathbed, and he just, it's something he said was just like really appealing. He's like, I know you're a really, really busy person, but remember when you're at my age, think about what matters like the most at this point. And it made me really look a lot inward as to, what I want to do with life, what my priorities were. And I remember reading this question last night and thinking, I'm just going to be real with Amy. And so I think for me, my greatest accomplishment is like, I look at my career and it's been the people I've impacted, whether that be the Patriot League conference win when I was 22 years old, winning the last match and being able to share that victory with my team because it was a team effort. I won that for the team. Or when I was in the military, having a soldier's wife come to me and just be so grateful for how, I helped their family with the decision I made. Or with Otso, with just the tenants and the landlords that, we helped. To me, now I kind of like look at it from a lens of, when I'm 80 years old, what am I going to care about? And as a whole, I think that's, and I wouldn't say it's like, it's just like a growing number, I hope. But I'd say that's what I value the most at this point.
Well, my best friend and I joke around sometimes that we hope to be 80 years old, drinking, vodka on the rocks and blowing spitball at the kids walking by as we're sitting on like the front porch. I guess she has in her mind that we will like have a cohabitation type of like thing going on by then. And so, but I think it really is the people. Like, I think all the things that you're talking about is about the people and not the things. And, I think it is so important. I think when I got back from the CREI Summit, it was one of the most like authentic experiences I have had. And there were a lot of things that were keeping me really, really busy. And I actually made some strategic like adjustments to my life, like since coming back and really thought about some things. And so, and I know your mentor, that one of your mentors, and we'll maybe talk about him a little bit later. His book helped me, tremendously with making some changes. So I think all these things come together. I'm just on this journey like everybody else is. So
same, totally. And I think I found as I get older, the more I realize, and at times where I'm like most stressed, or, and especially an entrepreneur journey, it's not a journey, it's a roller coaster, right? So you got weeks, you would have talked to me last week, I would have been like, good gosh, like things are tough. And then like this week, just things are great. It's just kind of the cycle of this, of this world. But I think it's just, there's so much from, especially when you have technology that we have, there's like so much focused outward on whether it be social media or like what other people think of you or what society expects of you, versus just being like one and kind of within and in touch with yourself inside. And that's kind of like a check. And I do that through meditation. But I mean, there's days where it's really, really tough to do those and get through those meditations. But yeah, I think that's one of my kind of like lessons, is kind of like making sure I'm grounded internally and like doing a check of like, where do I feel I am, and what's it, everything is like, everything you do is kind of caused by something, right? Out on the outside, you don't realize. And when you think about it, you're like, oh, I need to kind of like come back to myself in that way.
Yeah. I think, visualizing too, and also, but I think sometimes we go through these ups and downs, and I was given this advice last week. I think mental health is really important. I have a standing appointment with a psychologist once a month, and I probably would not have told people that 2 years ago, but now I'm like, okay, it's fine. But she talked about like, sometimes I think we are all our worst critic and we want to be further along in our journey than we are. And she said, what would your 15-year-old self think of, where you are? So actually, I feel pretty, she'd be like, wow, she's a badass.
Yeah.
Like, what do you think that your 15-year-old self would think?
Yeah, same. And I love that. And I love that you brought up that you work with a psychologist or therapist, because same. In fact, when you asked who my mentors were, I listed my therapist as one of them. Such an influence on my life. And I think mental health is so important. And I remember like talking to some of the women in our industry, and they make assumptions because they looked at your resume, and I'm like, no, man, like I've had some like breakdowns in life. I dealt with some trauma and PTSD, and I have anxiety, and I found that I am one of those people that I'm a high performance anxiety person. So a lot of my accomplishments, I feel like earlier in my life, were all driven by fear. And in the last 3 or 4 years, I've like tried to kind of like tweak that, because that's not healthy to go about life. Like fear is a good thing, right? And it's not a bad thing. It can be utilized well, but kind of surrounding everything that you do around that is not healthy as well.
Is it interesting though, the further and further you get and change yourself, the more comfortable, it's uncomfortable at first, but then you become more comfortable with the change in like cadence. Like the cadence of my life before, I think, was a bit like chaotic. And now I'm still like, anyone who meets me, I'm very like zany, and I'm very like fast paced, and I'm very, very like go, go, go. But I've gotten like more comfortable with my new like identity. Like, how do you feel like you've been?
Oh, I just turned 40 a couple of weeks ago, and I did a lot of reflecting.
Happy
on that this
birthday!
year. Thank you. Thank you. But I feel, and I talk to most women, I feel like as you get older in general, you just stop caring about what other people think. So I could totally, relate to that, as far as focusing on and being more confident in general in myself, and not doubting myself. I mean, there is still that comes up. But just I for me personally, I feel like it is like connecting with and being close with other women in our industry, such as yourself, has been such the game changer for me in being empowered, and just having those like outlets, cheerleaders, your 2 a.m. calls when things are tough. Because we're all going kind of through the same thing.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize how alone I was, and how many like weeks or months would go by without talking to a single woman on a sales call, or any call would go for me, personally, before, I've kind of found a group that, become dear friends with.
Yes. And I have now joined the group. It's been amazing.
I love
So
it.
do you want to talk? Oh, well, yeah. How about you talk a little bit about that group before we talk about anything else?
Yeah. I mean, by all means, there's nothing formalized about this group just yet. We're working to do that. But it really started back in 2020 where I was just like, again, I realized I'm like, I don't know any women. I know maybe like know 2 women in the industry ish. And I wanted to selfishly just kind of like learn and just connect with more women. And obviously in isolation during COVID, that was like needed more than anything too. And so we put together this most influential women's list, and we researched like, all the women like doing things. And it wasn't like, how many deals are you doing? It's like, what are you doing for the community? What are you doing for other women? What are you, how is your social presence? And so we chose like 25 women, and I was just like, okay, this is a great excuse for me to meet with all of them in a call. And fast forward 2.5 years later, and we're meeting every month. And from that list has evolved just kind of like this totally separate organic group of women, and just, others such as yourself have joined that we meet every month, and we come the difference is like we come with a deliberate ask. So it's very action oriented meetups where, fast forward 2 years and we've done deals together, we made each other money, we put each other on stages around the country, for conferences. It's this beautiful thing that's like, come together, and it's mainly focused on, working around women founders, women managing directors, a lot of our conversations around management and whatnot. So it's a really special group, and I'm super, proud of where it is and excited to where we're going.
Will you tell us the name of the secret society?
It's the Power Beacons.
That is awesome. I thought that was a great name. Was it like a group decision?
It was. We did a meetup in Austin and on International Women's Day, which we'll do again this year. And we did just like a huddle, and we were like, what do we want to represent? And one of the gals said something to the extent of, we want to be beacons, like a lighthouse that guides the ships in. And so we're like, we want to be beacons for other women in our industry. And so that's kind of how we put power in front of it. Bam. It's amazing. It's a beautiful thing.
It is amazing. Such a powerful group of women. It's amazing. So you've been vocal about the need for more diversity, equity, and inclusion within the commercial real estate field. Can you talk a bit more about that?
Yeah, it just goes back. I've been in the industry almost a decade, and not until about 2.5 years ago did I finally find more than 2 women that I consistently talk to. Yes. And I think, especially on the transactional side, such as yourself, being a broker and starting off, you're just surrounded in a bullpen of men, constantly. And I do believe that in the value that diversity brings to bringing in different perspectives, more innovative ideas come in. And so I feel that, growing that movement and becoming more diverse, bringing in different perspectives will make our industry stronger. And I know there are, compared to 10 years ago, it's different. There's progress, but it's still, I forgot, Barbie Reuter put the other day, what the percentage is. It's still rather low, the percentage of women. And I know that recruiting women into our industry, I can't tell you how many women I've met that's like, oh, I tried it and I went to residential, or I tried it and it was just, not for me. And you think about it, because they're going into these firms that are all led by men, like the CBREs, and started and mostly men. Whereas I think what we're building with the Power Beacons and forming a group of women such as yourself, women-owned brokerages, there's a ton of women starting to see, I need to just build the table for myself. And I feel that, more women starting their own tables, and, you're a gal coming out of college and you're like, oh, look at this. They're making this person's making some good money. I could see where this can lead to. And she has, a ton of women that work with her. This could be a great environment for me. And that difference, from kind of the status quo or where people traditionally end up. And not that it's not bad, because there's a lot of women, I'm sure, such as yourself, that went that route and were still successful and are still there and are still doing great. But I think from a standpoint of, do we want want more women, I think we need to have more women leaders. We need to have more women owners.
Right. And I think having, for me, that supported structure, when I went to, that was a big thing when I went to CREI versus, some other groups that I go to, I think it can be a lot more male leaders and such going to those groups. I think at CREI, there's so many people like Daly and otherwise.
There was a ton of women on stage. Yeah, there was. And that I loved the SIOR president, Patrick Sumner, went on stage and he was like, this is definitely refreshing to see that as a white man who he is, I'm not, I see very, very different people in the crowd. And that was super, I think, special and a testament to the value of CREI for sure. And I mean, I'm not just talking about women, even I'm talking like people of color, there's still a big disparity and gap with that as well in our industry.
Yeah, I think just bringing the awareness and being around other people to effectuate that change really can make a difference.
For sure. Absolutely.
So how about your service in the military? How has that helped you to grow as an entrepreneur?
Oh, goodness. Yeah. I mean, that was very, very foundational skill set that, I think from a leadership standpoint, building teams, that was what I was trained from the age of 18. And I didn't realize when I got out of the military that that's a skill set not everybody has or is taught even in like their mid-20s. And so, I was in charge of over 80 people in my early 20s. So like having that experience and understanding what it takes to not only have an idea, but to build a team to execute on that idea and scale has been super, super helpful. And I think too, it's given me perspective because being an entrepreneur is tough. I've been doing this 7 years now, just about, and 7 years straight. So if you add the other, so it's about 10 years total that I've been an entrepreneur. And I think there's some really, really tough times. And there's tough times from a standpoint of funding years ago. And I remember at those times, I always kind of brought back like my military perspective, because at the end of the day, I'm like, this sucks. My day sucks. There's a lot that sucks right now. But at the end of the day, I have to remind myself I'm not getting shot at in Iraq. It's not that bad. And I think going through those experiences, really, I think in some ways, really kind of everyone comes out of situations differently. But I think for me personally, that is kind of like the reason I kind of, in my parents' eyes, YOLO my way through my 30s in some ways, starting companies and not doing that as much like the traditional, route of things is maybe having that perspective as well.
Yeah.
But I'd say as far as like, and I think as far as one of like the biggest lessons to my success, that I've gathered over the years and why I've been able to kind of get over hump. And I think it's really, and going back to Doc Z and my mentor from college is focus, is my ability to focus and, grit and not giving up. That has to do with like focus. When I'm like focused on something, sometimes my wife is just like, oh my gosh, like if it's not like a healthy thing to focus on, for example, if it's like playing Bejeweled on your phone, like I could just get like so sucked into things. If I'm really, really interested in something, like I put everything into it. But it's also just like that practice and that discipline of every day. This is what I'm going to focus on. And that mindset, I think I attribute that, the most to my success. And really from a standpoint of even kind of diving deeper, going through hard situations and having the right perspective as you're going through it, i.e. sometimes in entrepreneurship, for example, I'll say, hey, what sucks right now is what makes the other side so special. When I was driving I had to drive Lyft one year because we had no funding. But I still believed in what we were doing and I didn't want to get jobs. So I was like, I need to make some ends meet. My wife didn't have her private practice at the time. So I needed to kind of pitch in. And so I drove Lyft for a little bit. And I remember going, this sucks. Like, I mean, but at the end of the day, I kind of did enjoy it because I like talking to people. So that was fine. But I just remember being like, you know what, one day you're going to be on the other side and you're going to be able to tell the story and you're going to inspire some people. That's what you're doing today, you know? And I think having like those types of outlooks and optimism as you're going through kind of like shitty moments and that focus on that is extremely important.
I think the mindset is so important in being able to reset and use perspective. Is there anything else you'd like to talk about with mindset and perhaps your mentor, Doc Z?
Yeah, I mean, I have it on my wall still. When I was since 18 years old, when I started working with him, I didn't know what they were called at the time, but he'd give each of the people he worked with, we would get these pictures of ourselves and then affirmations around the picture, and we put it on our desk. And over the years, I kind of picked up this habit again about 5 years ago, and it's great because when I'm feeling crappy, I look up and I'm like, oh, like there I am, like a picture. You can't see it, but it's like a picture of myself like on stage. So it's like a moment that I felt good, really, really good. And then like all my affirmations, and then a reminder. I actually had my big 10, like my big 10 kind of like accomplishments on the other side. So it's just a great, I don't know, back to his book, that importance of putting in good deposits of thoughts in your mind is so important, and being aware when they're not good deposits, like the negative thoughts creep in.
I made a new affirmation that yes, I will arrive at the gym by 8:30 a.m., 5 days a week, ready to push myself. And I have done that 2 times this week, and I knew I wasn't going to go today, but yeah, I like it. And then it's like when you have it come to fruition, it's really cool. So
yeah, for sure. Yeah. And then every day I recommend, I use what's called a Panda planner. And it's a game changer for me. I started this 3 years ago, and every day it makes you kind of journal. What are you grateful for? 3 things you're grateful for, 3 things you're excited about. And then at the end of every day, like, what did I win? What was my win and what was my improve? And you have like your priorities like every day. And especially as an entrepreneur, you've just got like so much stuff going on that like, this is also kind of like a great tool for me to be like, okay, like, if nothing else happens today, what would make me feel good at the end of the day if I were to just finish this 1 thing or 2 things? And it just kind of makes life a little bit less overwhelming at times. So that's a big recommendation I have for folks, is the Panda planner.
I will have to look into it. Is it a written planner?
Yeah, you can just buy it on Amazon. I'll send you the link after this.
Cool. What advice would you give to other aspiring entrepreneurs in general, or maybe to women entrepreneurs?
Yeah, I think just in general, if you can't find yourself waking up every day to do what you're doing or what you're building, if you don't have that passion, and no matter what, like still, like if some things go wrong, you're not able to wake up, then don't do it. If you're not that passionate about it, because I have seen entrepreneurs put like half a leg in, half a leg out, and that's not, I mean, and it can work for some people, but you got to have that passion. I think surrounding yourself with people that are smarter than you. And that was like a little bit tough for me, not tough from a standpoint of being with smarter people, but for me, it was more so identifying what my kind of gaps were earlier on. Because like from the military, I came from, and not that we're all exactly alike, but we're all trained exactly the same. We're kind of similar. We have like, similar experiences. And I'm comparing myself to like other soldiers, right? We have kind of like the same skill sets in general, assumption there, but like not everyone's like that. But like for the most part, I came from this world where a lot of us were the same. And then leaving the military and realizing, oh, there's a lot of shit I don't know. And being like, what? And not only like not knowing what I don't know, but like knowing what I'm not good at and what I don't enjoy. Or not actually, it's more importantly what I don't enjoy doing. Because there are some things I'm good at that I don't enjoy doing. And especially as an entrepreneur, it's so important. And you're not always going to, have the ability to like not work on things that you don't like doing. There's always those tasks. But in general, like my business partner and I, like over the years, every year we'll just do this kind of like accountability. It's like, how do you feel? Like I was CEO in the beginning, and then like one day I woke up and I'm like, I don't want to deal with fundraise. I mean, I'm helping, but I don't want to lead and be responsible for this anymore. I want to execute more in the business. I want to do sales. I want to do, and he was just, and I knew at that point he was ready to be CEO, and, and so we were just like, whoop, switch, like, and
Right.
And it was like a weight off both our shoulders, and we didn't even realize it. And so I think just being mindful of that and your energy around that. And then for women entrepreneurs, it's finding other women, find other women. And if you're listening to this, you're a women entrepreneur, you don't know any, please contact me. Because that's such and then just in general, having other founders that you trust, that you could talk to about, your shitty days, and who can relate in some way, shape, or form. Because what we do is very like different from most people, in my life anyway, out of my friends and out of my family. There's not a lot of entrepreneurs. So
yeah, definitely not in my life. I didn't have that role model in my life until I started dating my boyfriend, and his mom was an entrepreneur several times, and we clicked. I said, if things don't work out with your son, like, you're kind of stuck with me now, because she was such a great role model. So I still talk to her every day, and she gives me so much advice on just like how to manage everything. And she's delightful. So
that's amazing.
I think, no matter who it is, it's like to surround yourself with other people that can mentor you and be willing to take that. It's key. You talked a little bit about Doc Z's book. Do you have any other books or that have inspired you?
Untethered Soul. That's a good, like, kind of like self-help book. I'm a big self-help person.
Untethered or unfettered?
Untethered Soul. There's a journal that goes with it. I did that over COVID and thought it was incredible. Like, definitely different perspectives out of that one. Grit by Angela Duckworth is another one. I love that book. And The Way of Integrity is one I read like a couple of weeks ago that I couldn't put down, by Martha Beck. So those are my kind of like,
we will have to include links to those books and the Panda Planner and all the things, like,
absolutely.
when we post this. So looking back, is there anything that you would ever do, what you would have done differently?
I think from a standpoint of I think everything, you learn, you make mistakes for a reason, and it's part of the journey of life, and surrendering to that is important. But I think also, from my perspective, it's just like the one thing I would maybe do differently is prioritizing the things that value, like, over, like, I prioritize my work. And looking back, I remember missing weddings, funerals, just quality time with my grandparents, or quality time with family members or friends, and passing it up because I have a board call, or I have this, or I had this. And frankly, I don't even remember, like, at this point, like, some of those, and that's, at the end of the day, life is a sum up of moments, and that's something that you can't get back. And not that, like, but I think, and so, like, moving forward, there are priorities with the business that will come over, it's not a even balance all the time, realistically. But if I can help it, I'm going to prioritize that wedding. I'm going to figure out how to make it happen, especially with remote work, these days. But I think that would be the one thing, if I were to do something like differently. And what's crazy is, like, I didn't have a boss or anything that was like holding a gun to my head, like, hey, you can't go on this vacation, or you can't do this, you can't go to this event. It was all me. And it was, I digging deeper. It was fear around expectations of what other people thought of me. It was fear, all of that stuff that I'm supposedly grown up out of at this point. We'll see. But yeah, no, I think that would be the one thing I could think of.
Yeah, I think that also, I think it's helpful that you are surrounded by people that can accept those things. But although you were saying that it had nothing to do with the clients or anyone else, you like wanted to keep doing everything you could to like grow these different businesses, even at the sacrifice of your personal life. I think maybe it's just a journey of getting more balance as
I
it
think
goes
it's a
along.
journey of balance. I also think, and like really thinking about it, like looking busy makes in our society, in our culture, makes people feel more important, you know, and maybe more like seen. And I think like, especially in my early 30s, there's a lot of insecurity because all the people around me had very secure jobs and like, and here I was like bootstrapping companies. And so I think there's an insecurity within me, if I'm completely honest with myself, to be like, I need to show that I've got, you know, I've got stuff going on too. And I don't know that I would have admitted that a couple of years ago, but I think that's part of it as well.
I'm trying to, now that I will be entering 40 soon too. I think that I was told by one of my favorite mentors is like in the 40s, you're supposed to be just kind of like a duck going across the water, even if you're like this, like underneath, like, you know, like just gliding across the water. I think it's better. Like, I mean, you've already kind of proven yourself. I think the good thing is too, I think you had to kind of put some of the work in, but maybe not all of it.
Yeah.
To prove your cred. And now you can not really like rest on your laurels, but more so, I mean, I don't know, enjoy the fruits of your labor.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and it was a privilege to be where I was at points, and I still, you know, have like privilege today that I'm grateful for. But yeah, absolutely. But I don't think I mean, from a standpoint of like, it like never ends, like this journey of like the ups and downs and whatnot. But I think, yeah, in your 40s or in my 40s so far, it is that kind of what are you focused and prioritized on? Because I think about what you said earlier, it's like proving to who? Proving to myself, proving to my dad, proving, you know, after a while I was like, who am I proving this to? To show society, and so I can get something else on my resume so that I can have something, you know, feel more valued and seen. A lot of that I realized it was work I needed to do within myself. But yeah, no, it's just ups and downs, and it's a journey nonetheless. I think like the key term maybe is surrender, is you realize in your 40s too.
Yeah.
You surrender, and then you know you're going to figure it out and make it through one way or another.
Yeah. Well, I hope to inspire the new set of generation, the others coming in, especially women, that, you know, it is important to rely on others, you know, more being involved can hopefully make things easier so that you can have some balance. I know that was something that helped me in my career, surrounding myself with good mentors to get that information, make things easier. Many hands make light work, you know?
Yeah.
And then just teaching people to like kind of go after those things. But I mean, I think no matter what, I think there's a phase in your 20s and 30s that you got to put that work in, you know?
Yeah.
But then, you know, to the extent that you can have balance, I think it's good to have balance. So I think COVID's been a good thing in that respect.
Yeah, I mean, we had to make some lemonade out of that situation for sure. And unlike, I've talked about this before and blogged about it, but like COVID for me actually like saved my marriage in a lot of ways, where it kind of broke a lot of people's marriages, unfortunately. You know, we came out of it, and because of it, actually, you know, worked more on ourselves and on our relationship. And if COVID wouldn't happen, I don't know that, you know, there's a chance we might not have been together. In a couple of years. So yeah, I mean, I think there was some obvious tragedy that happened from that time period, but there is also, you know, some good things as well.
I can relate to that. I think, yeah, COVID was good, because between COVID and my kids and all the other things like going on, like I realized there was like such like, it was good, but then there was such dysfunction. And then we kind of like was like, okay, all right, let's figure this out. So actually, in addition to my personal counselor, I have like a reoccurring every 6-week appointment for marriage. And we spent an hour and a half, and our marriage counselor is actually in Austin, even though we live in Orlando, and she's like amazing. So, but we've learned so many really cool things, and some of the stuff that they use in like the military, she's like trained on to work with people with like PTSD. But but I could communicate so much better with him and then other people. Like I'm just so much more like empathetic and listening. So I
building
think
on that skill set.
yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome.
But I think, yeah, COVID like can be like, it's a good thing. Like it could be like a wake up call or like whatever. It's like, okay. And then use the opportunity to do things. So I also think there's a trend within the commercial real estate industry, especially at our conference, we had sessions about some pretty traumatic things and people coming through them and the emphasis on that.
I think that there is this movement around vulnerability, which I think is refreshing, frankly.
Yes.
And, you know, even from a standpoint of looking from like social media and brands, growing your business, being real is what you as the person, whereas opposed to 10 years ago, I think like, you know, you market with the brand, but now it's like you have to, the person is what leads people to the brand. I'm finding that was one of my biggest lessons and what I've learned from CREI Summit. But I think, and if you look at the social media platforms and why some of these influencers do well, it is because it's like they're showing a vulnerability side that other people can connect to. And that's why they do well in some cases. But yeah, I agree. There's a lot more of that in the world and in our industry, which is refreshing.
That is interesting since you're so involved in social media. I wonder if it's become because of the consumption of social media too, that it would be an impossibility for someone to maintain these poised and polished brands that they used to have back in the day. I mean, you know, there wouldn't be this constant consumption of people and brands like there is now too. No. I wonder if it's even from an impossibility that this trend has started or what it is. But
yeah, well, if you even think about it from the standpoint of like the quality of shooting, even, you know, like I did TikTok for work yesterday and I was literally like in my office without makeup, just whatever, you know, like I feel, you know, if you're like too polished and it looks too, you know, there's value to the quality being more genuine in itself as well. And I've seen your content too, and I love it because you're just like, let's just go, let's film. And that's what brings out, I think, the real value is that vulnerability and you being like a real person that people can connect to, right?
Yep. Wow. Well, it's been awesome to connect. Is there anything else you want to talk about before we talk about how people can get a hold of you?
This is a fun conversation. Thank you for having me. And I look forward to listening to it when it's ready.
Yes. And then how can people get a hold of you?
Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn, Marissa Limsiaco, or my email is marissa@otso.io.
And then before we wrap up, do you want to talk a little bit about Otso and what it does?
Yeah. So Otso, we consider ourselves the tenant risk experts in the industry, with the ability, literally our foundational product is an insurance, a bond insurance. That's an alternative to traditional cash deposits and letters of credit. And what we really help owners, and these were the same challenges we faced as owners ourselves, and why we built this solution, is we're able to help owners, number one, automate underwriting, which is great, and make that process faster for potential tenants. And number two, they're able to capture more protection than they typically would collect in cash and letters of credit. And so the value to the tenant there is because we have a bond, they're not required to lock up that capital. So that's why we're, 93% of tenants will use us in every deal. So yeah, we're national. We cover every asset class that's just non-residential. And so if anyone out there has challenges or friction around the security deposit or just looking to gain more protection across their portfolio, we're here for you.
Yes, it is an amazing, amazing tool. I just wish it had been around sooner. So. Yeah. Well, great. Well, thanks to everybody for tuning in. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, download all the different things so that we can continue to get the word out. And I'll see you on our next episode. soon.